Hi, I'm Don Curry, Chief Instructor of the NSCA. Today we're talking to instructors about using occlusion devices. We've gone into great detail in the Level 1 Instructor's Manual available online about how to diagnose and properly address eye dominance issues. So we're not going to go into that on this video. What we are going to do is address specifically how we would apply an occlusion device if you determine that the student has an eye dominance issue and that an eye dominance or an occlusion device is the only way around a fix. Okay, so that's your only solution at that point. You've decided you've got to apply an occlusion device. Here's how you do it. Okay, there are a couple of different options. You always want to be least invasive first, so you want to go just like if you have an ingrown toenail, you wouldn't cut off the whole foot. Okay, so you want to go very gradually and step very gradually into occluding a shooter's vision, because what you're essentially doing by putting an occlusion device on the non-shooting eye is you're turning them to a degree into a one-eyed shooter. And we only want to do that to the extent necessary to put them on each target appropriately, okay? So there are a couple of different occlusion devices out there. One's called ShotSpot. They come in two different diameters, 12 millimeter and 16 millimeter, and they come in occlusion strengths of 0.3, 0.6, 0.8, and 1.0. And again, that is all addressed in the Level 1 manual. The other type of occlusion device that we sometimes have to use are called Morgan dots, and Morgan dots are basically full occlusion devices. Okay, they usually come in a size somewhere around 25 millimeter, but these can be cut using a handy little hole punch that you can get in Michael's or Joann's. It's a 1.59 centimeter hole punch. You can actually punch these into sizes of almost exactly 16 millimeters. So 12 millimeters is the size of the human pupil. 16 millimeters is a little bit larger. So if you have a student that has a very consistent mount, then you're going to want to use the 12 millimeter, because you don't want to occlude from an area standpoint, from a coverage standpoint, you don't want to occlude any more than you have to. So that's a 12 millimeter, the size of the human pupil. This is a 16 millimeter, a little bit larger. So the 16 millimeter would be used in cases where you have a student that really doesn't have a consistent mount. A beginning or novice student would be a great example. So again, you've gone through your protocol, you've decided that the student definitely needs some level of occlusion. As an example, for a right-handed shooter, that shooter's going to be habitually missing targets from the left, off the left shoulder, high and behind, covering up the target incessantly. In skeet, it would be missing a high 2 pretty consistently, covering up the target. So you've decided that the student needs some level of occlusion. Now we're going to talk about how you apply that occlusion device appropriately. What you're looking for, and I'm going to grab my gun here, what you're looking for is for the occlusion device to be placed immediately and exactly between the front bead of the shotgun and the student's non-shooting eye. So here's sort of what we're looking at. You see it's an empty gun. We're looking for the occlusion device to be lined up exactly between the front bead of the gun and the student's non-shooting eye. In this case, it's my left eye because I'm a right-handed shooter. And I'm going to go ahead and apply a much darker occlusion device to my glasses so that you can see exactly what it looks like a little bit better than if I have a clear one on. So I'm now using a 16 millimeter occlusion device, and I'm using a Morgan dot, so it completely occludes the non-shooting eye, and I'm going to show you what it looks like when I'm fully mounted to the gun. So as an instructor, what you want to do is please double and triple check to make sure you've got a student with an empty gun, and then you're going to want to place yourself at the front of the gun and line up the front bead of the gun when the student is mounted properly and the pupil of the student's non-shooting eye. And you want to make sure that that occlusion device is right in between, centered perfectly between the front bead and the student's pupil. And here's what it's going to look like. Okay, so that's a perfectly aligned occlusion device. Circular. You want the center of this bead, the center of the pupil, to be right in the center of the occlusion device.